Okay, so this is the video for topic 3.0, where we're focusing on the context of the rise of empires after 1450. So our guiding question for this video is, what was the context for the rise of empires after 1450? Welcome to a new time period. Between 1450 and 1750, the world changes a great deal, taking the political process that had developed from the past and developing new ones. We see the rise of new empires that participated and expanded trade to the world level and interacted in a global network of trade. So this time period is actually going to be divided into two units. In Unit 3, the unit that we're on right now, we're going to focus on empires. And in empires, we need to learn two main things. One, what were the factors that led to their development, their expansion? And secondly, how did they unify, rule, and provide? When we get to the next unit, we're going to look at how maritime empires promoted this world trade and how it changed a lot of the things that we looked at in the first time period. So in this specific lesson, we're going to learn how to write a context statement. So the question that we're answering is, what was the context for the development and the expansion of empires from 1450 to 1750? So ultimately, you're going to write and turn in a context paragraph of between 4 to 7 sentences. This context paragraph must, first of all, identify and describe the events and the developments that led up to the rise of new empires after 1450, and identify what an empire is and their motivations for forming after 1450. This is about context. And context is something that is evaluated in the multiple choice questions, evaluated in the short answer questions, and is your introductory paragraph for your long essay questions, both the DBQ and the LEQ. And what it does is it describes the setting for the event or the development that you're talking about. So when you grade context, there's three things that need to be there. One, you have to describe the setting. You can do this best by explaining what led up to the event that we're talking about. Secondly, there's got to be a connection. And then thirdly, you've got to describe the development or the event. When I say describe, I'm talking about more like a definition. So to put this into what you're learning today, the very first thing you're going to describe here is what led up to the rise of empires. That's the setting. Then you're going to connect it, say basically after 1450, empires emerged. And then the third thing is you're going to define what an empire is. And you're also going to explain why they emerged, what was their motivations after 1450. So the first thing you need to do is this. In Canvas, there's this reading. It's called the What is an Empire reading. And you need to read it, and you need to find the following. One, you need to be able to identify the thesis. Two, you need to identify the claims that back up the thesis. And three, you need to identify the specific historical evidence that the author uses to back up their argument. This is an important skill because you're going to be required to do this not only on the DBQ, but in other ways on the AP exam. You can find this by going to Canvas, or if you can click the link or fill the link in and do it. Please pause the video and read and do the assignment. Welcome back. Okay, so you've read it. So basically, when you talk about the thesis statement, it's right there in the opening paragraph, and it's pretty much the first two sentences. An empire is the political rule of one group over other people who have differing languages and customs. In contrast, a kingdom is smaller and composed of a people of a set of common characteristics. So when we talk about the claims, first of all, the first paragraph there talks about the government, that the government has to be very powerful because it's ruling this diverse population under a single administration. Secondly, it goes into the fact that it's got to be paid for. Empires are very expensive. So when we talk about evidence, it talks about the fact that they built linkages, that was the extensive transportation and communication networks, basically focusing on trade. Long distance trade is the economic lifeblood. And basically, taxes needed to be collected, legal systems need to be established. Well, when we talk about legal systems, we're talking about religions and bureaucracy. And then they bring out the military to protect trade, to enforce the laws, and defend the empire. Okay, this all led to the accomplishment of a balanced facted. Okay, it goes into that stuff. So, to make a long story short, from this reading, we get the definition of an empire, what we're focusing on in this time period. So, an empire is a very large political unit that rules a large area and a diverse population. These are very big. Now, you have to use political unit because a country is different from an empire. A nation's different from an empire. A state's different from an empire. So you have to use the term a large political unit. Secondly, that these empires require unique political processes. And the first one is to unify, and they're going to unify through the continued use of a state religion, though that religion is going to be much more defined. Secondly, they establish the legitimacy of their government using religion and new things, because remember, this is multicultural empires, that they create strong centralized power through the use of professional bureaucracy and the military. This is important. When we talk about centralized power, we're talking about a government that is able to directly rule the individuals of their empire throughout the land. The Mongols, though they were called an empire, they really relied upon local rulers. They never really established their power other than the threat of death over the people that they ruled. Here in an empire, you're going to see members of the bureaucracy traveling great distances to enforce the laws, to collect the taxes. And one of the things that we're going to see is these bureaucrats, they become professional, meaning that they're paid. Now, we also have this new development, professional militaries. These are state militaries, meaning that it's like a job. You could go to become a soldier, you get fed, you get equipped, and also you get a salary. And essentially, this makes it more powerful and it makes these soldiers more loyal. Now, we're seeing the continuation of the market economy and providing through trade. So essentially, when we talk about why these empires emerged after 1450, was for economic reasons. In the past, they were taught about how to create a successful state. So they're going to rebuild the Afro-Eurasian web, but they're also going to build a worldwide web. And the whole goal was to bring in wealth through controlling trade, controlling production, or stuff like that to support their market economy. So this is what we're focusing on. So we've got part of our context set up. The second part, this is what we're talking about, and this is why. Now, we need to talk about what led up to this. What I want you to do is I want you to press pause, and I want you to list the developments and the events that took place from 1200 to 1450 that are going to lead to the rise of empires after 1450. Go ahead and press pause now and do that activity. Okay, welcome back. So the event and the developments that are going to set the stage for the rise of empires begin with the rise of the global tapestry states. These states were created, and they came up with methods for unifying, ruling, and providing for their populations. Of course, they unified through religion. They ruled through establishing legitimacy using religion and by having a bureaucracy, and they provided through trade. Now, these states are going to build this massive Afro-Eurasian web. They're going to participate it and they're going to expand it. And what they want is they want to bring in wealth to support their market economy. So everything's going well, but then the Black Death begins. And what this does is this begins to slow trade across the Silk Road into Europe, an area of demand. And this decline in demand begins to slow the trade in the Indian Ocean system and the Afro-Eurasian system, because what's happening is that the areas of demand are beginning to decline. And then the areas of connection, because remember, the Indian Ocean system did come into the Silk Road, this declines too. So all those states that were not directly influenced by the Black Death in India and sub-Saharan Africa, they're suffering too, because trade's slowing down and eventually trade stops. Well, the states such as, Yuan, China, the different states of Dar es Salaam, the feudal states of Europe, they begin to struggle. The Hanseatic League does not have an income, and they begin to fall. So we have this massive political vacuum. Pretty much all the states that existed during the global tapestry collapsed because the Black Death had stopped its lively blood of wealth coming in from trade. It's just like if your heart stops. Well, here's our connection. Now, after the Black Death goes through, we're going to see the development of small states. And because there's this power vacuum, this lack of a government, what we're going to see is a lot of these smaller states, such as the Turkic states, begin to expand. They begin to build their empires in the exact same areas. And ladies and gentlemen, they begin to recreate trade to support their market economy. So when we talk about the takeaways, the context, what our paragraph should read like, we have to begin with the things that led up. And this is the rise of the global tapestry states. So we have to describe that between 1200 and we could say 1300, 1450, we see the rise of states. And these states greatly depended upon trade to bring in wealth, that everything was good until the Black Death came. And this slowed trade down, causing economic problems, causing other problems, and eventually all these states collapsed. So these empires emerged to kind of replace them. So you start with states that are building empires and learning from the past to be able to do this. So you're going to want to add the definition of empire, because to achieve that context point, you have to explain what we're talking about. And then the last thing is you have to explain why these empires developed for economic reasons. So what you need to do now, if you miss class, is essentially write me a context statement between no less than, I would say, 6 sentences, no more than 10 sentences. Make sure it's in paragraph form. If you're studying for the video, for your test, for your SAQ test, there will be questions that ask you to contextualize a document or an event. This is one way you can do it.